Okay, so today we are going to be doing the last bit of the introduction. So, a little recap of the previous week's discussion, and also that this is the last class in this calendar year. And Swamiji used to often mention these dates very interestingly. He would say that when some phase is ending and something is beginning, we tend to become quite reflective and quite hopeful both at the same time. The reflectiveness is important because you need to, in at least in spiritual path, you need to reflect as part of your learning, and the reflection adds deeper sense to your further study and further you know deeper understanding, deepening your understanding. And the hope is also very keen and very important, because hope, on the mindset of the hope lies the inspiration with which we progress forward. So very often people tend to relate hope with only acquisition, aggrandizement. But hope is also important in spiritual field for clarity, for insights. So when we say that we are hopeful for the future, it need not necessarily be for aggrandizement. So that is one of the very fundamental things. Normally people say, when you wish somebody a happy and prosperous new year, we mean more achievements, more acquisitions, etc. But prosperity can also mean clarity, because the greater the clarity, the better it is in our understanding, deeper is our profundity of insights that we receive in our meditation seat and in our day-to-day living. Okay, so last week's discussion revolved around four topics. The Upanishads, in Swamiji's explanation, he gives quite a deep exposition on why the Vedas, with their contents, the end of the Vedas, which is referred to as the Vedanta, effectively would mean the conclusion of the learning of the Vedas. And elsewhere, I had listened to one Swamiji who was saying only 4% of the Veda is actually the Upanishad content, 96% is the mantra and upasana and all the other bits which are there in the Veda. The reasoning is also very straightforward, that the essence or the conclusion of that teaching is the one that makes a difference, and obviously that will always be very direct and clear, and therefore it occupies less percentage space in the whole overall written documentation of the Vedas. But the application, which will then go into various types of practices, which will be karma kanda, mantras, or upasanas, etc., they are very specific and require very key instructions, very close instructions, which will then manifest as larger portions in the content of the Vedas. And the other aspect which Swamiji discusses in great depth is the use of language to describe or to teach or to point towards the infinite. And there is no alternative but to use language. And mind you, the language of the Upanishads, and particularly this, what we call as the Vedanta portion, is quite precise and quite cryptic. So the precision and the crypticness of that part of the text enhances the worthiness of it in terms of what we do with what we read. So when we read these verses and reflect upon them, there is a very good possibility that if you reflect and if you do further investigation in terms of asking yourself what you have understood, and therefore raising doubts for yourself and trying to seek clarification through your own insights and experience, the word itself is capable of being a vehicle towards you progressing towards the infinite. The example often cited, Gurudev himself has cited this example, that if the word given in the Upanishad were to be seen as a pointer, like how a finger is pointing towards the moon, the person who wishes to see the moon doesn't focus on the finger. He focuses in the direction of the finger, but uses the finger to keep and steady the vision such that while watching the finger and keeping the attention steadied, the moon is visible. If in the process of saying that I have seen the moon but I have lost where the finger is, actually it is not possible. You would only see the moon if your attention is perfectly focused on the finger as well as the direction in which it is pointing. That is how you see the moon. Same thing when you take the example of a marksman, a person who is a shooter. So he has a barrel of a gun which is hardly 3 feet if it's a long one, and if it's a small pistol it might be 6 inches. But the marksman's attention is 100% on the barrel. But that's not his goal. The marksman is not aiming at the end of the barrel. The attention is on the target. Even for a minute, even for a fraction of a second, if for some reason his breath vacillated, he loses the target. So we have to consider that the language of the Upanishad is like that. So at no point do we say, oh, the Upanishad is too abstruse, it's of no use to me, so I'm going to drop it. It cannot be said. We need to use the language of the Upanishad, absorb it into our understanding, and make it our vehicle. In recent times, one of the greatest, one of the good teachers, and to me the greatest, one of the greatest, is this individual called Gary Weber, who lives in the United States, American. He says the vehicle of the, the various chants that we do, the mantras that we chant for our self-improvement and reflection, etc. He says they are so potent that they have divinized his sadhana in the form of, in whatever he did for meditation, self-inquiry, etc. And he quotes 2 verses. Both these verses we have discussed even in our class. Many people have given their opinion also. One of them is Rudram and the other one is Nirvana Shatkam. And we know very clearly how magnetically these verses can propel one's mind into the inner process of meditation. So that we have to always keep that in mind. And the idea that there is an element of absorbing into the life of day-to-day living, as well as being absorbed in the life of day-to-day living, as well as keeping our attention towards the goal of life itself. So the goal of life is to gain the deepest connection we can make with the very substratum of existence, which is the substratum of existence being the Adhishtan, the Brahman, the oneness which is at the real source from where everything has emerged. Being absorbed in that appears to be the activity of worship, and being away from it appears to be the activity of work. So Swamiji devotes a huge discussion on what should be the goal of life and what should be the aim of existence. And in both these words that he has used, goal and aim, he has added very 2 extremely incomprehensible attached phrases. So when you say goal, you say my goal for the next month. It looks very reasonable. We can make a goal and we can define it. But the moment I say what is my goal of life, I have expanded it infinitely. Then if I say what is my aim for the week, I can clearly define it and I can achieve it. If I say what is my aim of existence, it is an infinite question. It's an infinite capacity. So this is how we have to, what I call as expand our vision to understanding the purpose of the Upanishad. We are not looking at a meager gain in a short term, but we are actually looking at something that is infinite, because what we are trying to seek, or what we are trying to say we are seeking, is the infinite. So it was not going to be encompassed and bound by time and space and causation, nothing. Therefore, these questions are also of that nature. So the goal of life, aim of existence. So no matter whenever you encounter this question and ask yourself and you try to jot down a few points, you'll find yourself always contradicting yourself. And the only reason you will contradict yourself is because you're trying to give answers in the realm that is defined by time, space, and causation. You are not finding the source of inspiration which will give you something of an insight about outside time, space, and causation. So you must keep that in mind. But remember that the Indian philosophical literature is always directing you towards this. And in many ways, all our great masters have consistently directed us towards this. It is only a matter of time. It's only a matter of, when I say time, it's a seeker's time, not time in absolute terms. In my seeker's life, like as a seeker, I know there is an element of time in my seeking. So therefore, I am saying in seeker's time, this clarity will emerge. That is, we no longer talk about goal for a specific time, space, and causation defined state. We no longer talk about aims in the same way. So we we will talk about this and reflect on it in the most deepest and the profound way. So that is the bit that we need to gain out of work and worship. Swamiji dwells on three more topics: secular and divine, and the solution. In the secular and divine, Swamiji clearly differentiates, and then Swamiji has done this many times, about all the secular pursuits and what is their function, and what is the meaning of divine pursuit and what is its function. So there is a functional meaning to a secular pursuit, and there is no mincing of words regarding secular pursuits. It is not that the Hindu tradition or the Hindu culture or the Hindu way of life declares the secular pursuits to be illegal or secular pursuits to be not to be done, not to be pursued. It has given very clear guidelines as to how secular pursuits are to be made. And those guidelines only encourage us to believe and to understand and to have confirmation that the secular pursuits are a vehicle or a transitionary position for my ultimate progression towards divine. If I don't pursue towards the divine, then my secular is misplaced. My secular pursuit is misplaced. So that is why whenever we look at the four Purusharthas, it is often said that Artha and Kama are the secular pursuits. But they are guided by the Shastras, they are guided by the teachers. So therefore we say Dharma guides the Artha Kama pursuit. Because Dharma is guiding the Artha Kama pursuit, the individual who lives this life of Artha and Kama, guided by the guidance of the Dharma, he becomes a right candidate to attempt towards moksha. If the Artha Kama has been guided by my English education and Macaulay's system of knowledge, etc., I will be quite content to remain at the Artha and Kama, which is what half the world or 80% of the world today is. So they have no dharma, they have no guru, they have no teacher, they have no higher vision. So it will not ever take them towards the path of moksha. Dharma artha becomes the last bit, and it is quite frustrating. By itself it is quite frustrating. Therefore disappointment and disgruntlement, which has also been discussed by Swamiji in the previous sections. So finally, in the section on solution, Swamiji dwells on life of action and the life of renunciation. And there have been many talks I have heard and many teachers who speak about. They relate this life of renunciation to the life of a sannyasi, which is not a true interpretation. Life of renunciation is actually life of renunciation. Because in the sadhana chatushtaya, when we say life of path of action, it is embedded in the fourfold spiritual seekers' way of life. The path of action is embedded in those fourfold qualifications. When we say Shatka Sampatti, the sixfold qualities or values that we will gain is all related to action in the world with the right attitude. But when does it actually transfer itself from being qualities to be gathered through action towards the attitude that needs to be generated, which will enable vairagya to happen, detachment to happen? That is where Viveka Vairagya come into picture. Therefore, the life of renunciation is the goal where the enabler is the path of action. So that is how the Upanishad has shown itself, and the synthesis is also shown, which we'll get into once we start the discussion. So we'll progress into the next bit of the topic, which is called our text. And what Swamiji has done in this is he has kind of summarized and brought out the gist of what we are going to be discussing over the 18 shlokas of the Upanishad. So we can go through the questions and we'll see how it is, unless anything else on the previous part.